Imitating the inner glow of a chironomid pupa inflated with gas is one of the key pattern traits we are trying to imitate. Today it is done using a variety of materials and resins. In years past we used translucent materials such as V-rib or scudback. The Bronzie utilizes V-rib over Flashabou to create a subtle but effective inner bronze glow, hence the pattern's name. The Bronzie can be tied on either straight or curved shank hooks. Early in the emergence, when chironomid pupa suspend almost inactive above the bottom, trout often favor a straight shank pattern. Here are the materials you will need to tie your own selection of Bronzies. So let's tie the Bronzie, a pattern from my first book, Fly Patterns for Still Waters. It still produces today, and it's more of a traditional looking chironomid pattern in this beadhead dominated world. Sometimes these traditional non-bead-headed patterns perform well because they're just a change up or a curveball, something the fish hasn't seen before. Into the jaws of my Regal, I've placed a 1560 Daiichi wet fly nymph hook. This is a one extra long hook. You can also use a standard shank, and you can also tie this fly on a curved scud pupa hooks such as the Daiichi 1120. We're going to use some brown, rusty brown tying thread. This is MFC rusty brown in 8/0. So I'm just getting the tying thread onto the front quarter of the shank because I'm sensitive to keeping this fly's profile nice and skinny. For the body, we're going to take advantage of the translucent qualities of V-rib. In this case, for this number 12, this is mid-size, very slender. So I've trimmed off a section of V-rib, and I don't know if the camera quite can show it, but there is a flat side and a half rounded side. And with my failing eyesight, it's not always easy to pick up. But I want to tie this with the flat side facing up. So when I wind the body, the round side will face out. So I've figured out where the flat side is and the round side, and I'm tying it in flat side up, concentrating the thread wraps, and then winding it back, holding it flat up on top of the shank under slight pressure. This V-rib's pretty malleable, but if you want to make it more malleable, particularly in the thicker sizes, just run it through your fingertips a few times to warm it up. And just go slightly down into the bend. I'm going to come up just either in front or slightly behind the hook point, just for safety's sake. And for the underbody, we're going to use some, this Flashabou's been around a while on my tying bench, but number 6906, copper. And I'm going to take 2 strands from the package, like so. I'm going to moisten them, trim them even, moisten them so they behave as one, get them tied in place, right down to where the V-rib is tied off, and then come forward and open wraps, making sure we're nice and even, right up to about that 3/4 point. And we're just going to wind this V-rib. Again, moistening my fingers helps keep it together. Watch that hook point, and we're just trying to make a nice copper body. Just wind that forward, close touching turns. If you get a few gaps in there, a little bit of thread shows through, it's not the end of the world, it's going to be covered. But if you can, try and make sure that it's basically an all copper body. And I like to use the Flashabou over sort of spooled mylar, because I just find it's more malleable, more easy to work with. And now we're just going to take our V-rib and start winding forward. One close turn to the next. To avoid having gaps, you can see I'm trying to almost push back against the previous wrap and wrap vertically. Don't be in too much of a hurry to go forward and lean your wraps forward like this, because you run the risk of accidentally putting little gaps between your wraps, and a little bit more of that copper will show through. Some days it might be the winning ticket. It's just hard to duplicate that kind of tying process consistently. And we're just using pressure to adjust the thickness. If I pull on this material, it's going to shrink down a little bit. But for the most part, because we're using the midge, we don't have to worry about that much. We get a nice uniform body. And we're just going to tie that off with a couple of wraps. Lock it in place and trim away. So you just see a little bit. I don't know if the camera quite picks it up. We've got a little bit of a glow to suggest the trapped air and gases. We've got natural segmentation from the round V-rib. Now we're going to take our tying thread right up to the hook eye, and we're going to form the thorax, a traditional chironomid thorax, if you will. And by traditional, I mean a pheasant tail or pheasant rump wing case, yarn or ostrich herl gills, and a peacock thorax. So we're going to start by tying in our pheasant tail. I've stripped off a clump of fibers. I'm going to come in a couple of wraps around just to encompass them on top of the shank. We can sort of lift and lever up. I've got the tips facing forward because the natural taper of the feather will narrow towards the back. When you see how we pull this over to form the thorax, it'll make sense. It just helps complement the sort of tapered, larger thorax, thin body of a chironomid pupa. Now for the gills, we're going to use some of the UV2 sparkle yarn in white. And depending on the size, you may have to thin this out a bit by stripping away some of the fibers. I like to moisten it a little bit as well to keep it in control. Just lick my fingers. And I'm going to tie this in place along the sides of the hook. Right up to, and I'll turn the vise so you can see a little better. So you can see that's along the side. So I'm going to take my tying thread, advance down the shank a little bit, pull the remainder back over to the other side, and pass the bobbin forwards so it forms a nice V like this. And we can sort of pre-trim this a little bit so the long length doesn't get in the way, and we've got enough to tie another couple of bronzies there. And then the thorax itself is just peacock herl. I'm going to take a single strand of peacock herl, tie it in by the tips. The very tip area I nip away about 3/8 of an inch or so. Trimmed off the tip, and you can see this definite fiber orientation along one side of the stem. So there's the grain of the peacock herl. I'm just going to come in and tie this by the tips. And my first wrap is going to be forward, a couple right behind those gills, and then I'm just going to walk that peacock herl and the thread, you'll notice. I'm going to walk that peacock herl back, and the thread, you'll notice, just follows along. I'm wrapping directly in front of the thread, overlapping the wraps a little bit, just to build up a nice chironomid looking thorax, if you will. I don't know if that's quite a term, but let's get that tied in. And the thread is right where the material is, so to tie it off, I just have to come in a couple of wraps, little down pressure, and snap forward, and we've got our thorax complete. And then we're just going to, again, moisten that sparkle yarn so it separates from the pheasant tail, and we're just going to pull the pheasant tail over. 1, 2, 3. Trim that off. And then we're going to trim our yarn gills. If we can. I've got one fiber sticking here I don't like, so we'll get rid of him soon enough. And then we're just going to pull them in and trim them about half thorax length. And you got those two nice prominent white gills sticking forward like the naturals have. And then to finish this off, we'll just give the bobbin a counterclockwise spin to open up the wraps a bit so they're flatter. We will give this a good coating of Loon's UV2 clear fly finish in the flow formulation. And just wind that directly, basically tread water with the thread, the same spot. And then come in with our whip finish tool, finish the fly at the back of the thorax. There may be a little residue sticking up there, but that's not the end of the world. Then all we have to do is you could come in again if you wanted. I'll tilt this a bit so you can see. Put a little more dab there, and if you can, a little controlled dab onto the top of the wing case, and then come in and activate. And again, I don't know if that camera shows it, but those white gills really light up. So when you're fishing this fly at depth, these gills are going to fluoresce and stick out from the rest of the community down there. Hopefully make your fly look a little more appealing than all those naturals. So that's the Bronzie. Again, a little bit more of a traditional pattern in that we hardly, many tyers today don't even use V-rib at all, but we can take advantage of its naturally translucent properties. It's still a great chironomid body material. We've got that traditional chironomid thorax with the white yarn gills or ostrich herl, pheasant tail wing case, and the peacock herl thorax. And you can tie this on a straight shank, such as this one, a 1X nymph. You can tie it on a standard hook to give you a shorter shank, or a curved scud pupa hook. At times, particularly early in the emergence, these long shank hooks that give the fly a straighter profile because the pupa aren't wiggling as much, tend to move more slowly, have more of a straightened posture as they're suspending just above the bottom prior to emergence, can be the difference some days. So you want to have a selection of both curved and straight shanked hooks so you can adapt your fly choice to the conditions before you. So there you have it, the Bronzie. For more information on fly fishing, and stillwater fly fishing in particular, please visit my website at flycraftangling.com. Here you will find fishing tips, fly patterns, articles, information regarding my seminars and schools, along with links to my blog and mine and Brian Chan's online Stillwater fly fishing shop. You can also visit our store directly at stillwaterflyfishingstore.com. In addition, you can also follow me through my social media channels, including Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks for watching, and please take the time to watch my other tying videos as well.